But today, right now, I want each of you to imagine you are a little fish and you are swimming around in a pond or a lake, and all of a sudden, there are not sharks, or it's a different kinds of sharks. There are lots and lots of little fishing lines, and on those fishing lines, on the hooks, there are lots and lots of tasty morsels. Well, again, you are the fish, and the scammers are those hooks with the tasty morsels trying to lure you in. Scams are not going away. In fact, they're proliferating, and all of the experts, the government agencies that track these kinds of things, say that they're absolutely in a crisis level in society today. I want to give you just a couple of facts and figures. In 2024, just last year, about 1.51, Mary, go ahead and do it again. $158.3 billion. $158.3 billion was taken from scam victims in the United States. That translates to $434 million a day. Now, most of us, because we write a check for a couple of $100, we really can't get our heads around those kinds of money figures. So I'll break it down even further for you. That amount of victimization, those actual dollar figures, come down to $300,000 per minute. Just think of that. The scammers are stealing $300,000 a minute from victims across the United States. There's a group called the Global Anti-Scam Alliance that's made up of major business players across the world, and by that I mean companies like Amazon, eBay, PayPal, Target, Best Buy, all of the big money people, Google, and a few organizations like AARP are also part of this Global Anti-Scam Alliance. And that particular group has said that in 2024, $1.3 trillion was taken by scammers from victims worldwide. $1.3 trillion. That's a lot more than the economies of some small countries. It's very, very easy to be a scammer these days. We should never lose sight of the fact that these people are criminals. We need to call them what they are. They are criminals. Scamming is not just some little fun game. There are no rules. It's really easy to be a con artist, and they make a whole lot of money doing what they do. And the sad part is, that is from our perspective, or the victim's perspective, there is very, very little chance that they're going to get caught. And so many of the scammers know that, and the criminals definitely take advantage of it. Online and telephone rackets have become so commonplace that law enforcement agencies and our protective service agencies simply don't have the resources to keep up. And that's why here at Members First, and in a very general broad sense, we all know that education is key. You as an individual are your own first line of defense against fraud. You need to protect yourself, and that's why I always like to say, if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. And certainly, I want everybody to be able to spot and stop. And I just realized I failed to put my red flag out of my bag. I wave my red flag liberally because there are so many, many red flag moments in our lives these days, and we all need to be aware of those times. There are 3 specific tactics that everybody needs to remember when they are dealing with their finances, their telephone calls, when they're on the internet, just in our daily lives. First of all, you never, ever give money or any kind of personal information to anybody who contacts you out of the blue. You don't know this person. You have absolutely no reason to understand why they're contacting you. They come up with some cockamamie story that they need to talk with you, or they need your information, and that is red flag number 1. You never, ever deal with anybody who contacts you unexpectedly and starts asking you questions about your life, your finances, your personal situation. Secondly, slow down and check it out. We all have a tendency to get caught up in the emotion of the moment. It's so easy to be sucked in, to be lured in, because you're listening to somebody threatening you, trying to intimidate you, telling you something that they say you need to hear. They are wanting your money because they are imposters and they are saying something that is simply not true. Slow down and check it out. You have to pause, reflect. Again, don't get caught up in the emotion. Don't ever succumb to pressure. You do your own research. You never click on a link in an email or a text sent to you. You never call back a toll-free number that's in a text message or a phishing email to you. You want to check it all out independently. You want to find a number, not by Googling it, because the criminal number will probably come up first, and then you'll be caught up even further in a scam. You want to do your own research, going to your own paperwork, your own file cabinet, your own business papers, to get the toll-free telephone number or the website for whatever group or organization it is claiming to contact you then. And the third red flag, you never, ever want to pay someone who only says you can pay in a certain way. They want you to pay by gift cards. It used to be wire transfers, but those have kind of gone out of favor a little bit. Sometimes they still ask for wire transfers. But the new hot one is cryptocurrency. And all you have to do is go into Giant, and there's a cryptocurrency machine. And you feed your money in, you get out the cryptocurrency, and the scammers know that all of these communities now are putting in Bitcoin machines or some type of cryptocurrency machines, ATMs, and it's so easy for them to tell you to get that type of currency to send to them in a particular scam. Almost all scams out there are imposter scams. The criminal is pretending to be someone he is not. And the imposter scams are actually in 3 very broad categories. There are the government imposter scams, there are the business imposter scams, and then the so-called friends and family type imposter scams. The government imposter scams include things, and most of you have heard of many, many of these. The IRS scam, when someone calls and says that you owe back taxes or you're being penalized in some way because you didn't send in the proper taxes, or you owe a fine or a fee, whatever it is they're telling you. And I always have to chuckle when I think that somebody actually thought they could pay their IRS back taxes in Target gift cards. but it's a whole lot more common than you might think. The Social Security scam is another one. You get a call, particularly these come by telephone. You get a call from someone saying they're with the Social Security Administration. Your number has been, that is your Social Security number, has been found associated with some type of drug cartel in Texas. And because of that, you are about to be arrested if you don't pay a certain fine or a fee, or they may say, in order to confirm that you are who you say you are and that it is your number, you need to give them your Social Security number. Then there's the jury duty scam, and it sometimes rises up periodically. And the jury duty scam is when you get a telephone call from someone claiming to be the county jury commissioner. And they say, you missed jury duty. Well, there are many of us that certainly understand our civic responsibility, and we know that if we are called for jury duty, we really do need to respond or to show up accordingly. And this particular scam, because all of a sudden you're told you missed it, and you think, well, I didn't even remember being called. I don't remember getting a letter in the mail. But the person says, because you missed jury duty, you are now subject to arrest. And the sheriff's department is going to show up this afternoon and arrest you at your home if you don't pay the fee or the fine. And usually it's something fairly nominal, like $300 or $400 or $500. And lots of people have that amount of money in their checking account or their bank account. And so rather than fighting it, they go ahead and they pay it. And the scammer, of course, is off to the races in those circumstances. The jury duty scam is out there. And again, if you don't get a letter from the jury commissioner, you certainly have not been called for jury duty. And usually they follow up. Once you fill in a form, send it back to them, they send you a second letter saying you've been called and what time to report and all of that kind of detail. So again, just be alert and aware. You did not miss jury duty. And then there is the federal grant scam. And I want to tell you about this one because it touched my life. I am a real creature of habit. I get up every morning and I typically read 2 newspapers. I live in Murraysville, which is in Westmoreland County, just outside of Pittsburgh. And I read 2 newspapers. We still have 2 daily newspapers. The Post-Gazette is online most of the week and with only 2 printed editions. But I also get the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, which, surprise, surprise, is delivered to my home in paper copy every single morning. Almost unheard of these days. So I read the Post-Gazette online and I read the Tribune-Review paper copy every single morning. I drink my cup of tea and enjoy the news. Or at least I'm aware of the news. And one morning, it was about 9 o'clock. I was still in my nightgown, but that's too much information, and my telephone rang. And I got up and answered it. And a man's voice said, "Is this Mary Bach?" And then I interrupted and I said, "And why are you calling me?" He said, "You have won a federal grant." Well, let me tell you, I can get real excited real fast. Although I thought you had to apply for one before you got it. And I said, "Oh my goodness, tell me all about it. Why was I chosen? How much is it for? What am I supposed to do with it?" He said, "We have selected people at random because we are trying to stimulate the U.S. economy. And we want you to go shopping." News to my ears. And I said, "Oh, well, tell me how much it's for." He said, "You have been awarded a federal grant for $9,700. Don't we all wish that kind of money would fall from the sky. I said, well, send it to me. I'm so excited. He said, no, wait a minute. We have to verify you are who you say you are. I said, okie dokie. He said, I have your name and your street address, and you live in Raleigh, North Carolina. And he had a Raleigh, North Carolina zip code, which he said out loud. And I said, sir, you're correct again. Well, I wasn't going to hurt his feelings. So now he's got me living in Raleigh, North Carolina. And he said, now I have to verify your age. I said, a gentleman never asks a lady her age. He said, if I guess it, will you confirm it? And I said, give it a try. He said, you're 85 years old. I said, no, too old. He said, you're 80. I said, nope, try again. He said, you're 75. He evidently only thought he could go down in 5-year increments. So I said, no, not 75. And he kept going down, and he finally hit 60. And I said, ooh, sounds good. Well, you can tell it's been a long time since I was 60. So now he's got me living in Raleigh, North Carolina at the age of 60. And I said, well, you're asking me all of these questions. Just go ahead and send me the money. You've got my information. You obviously have my phone number because you called me. And he said, do you know where the MoneyGram store is? Well, I do know what a MoneyGram is now. I personally have never used a MoneyGram. My life has just not required me to do that. But I know what they are, and I know a lot of people do use MoneyGrams or wire transfers to send money to their family or people they know for a particular reason, etc. So I said, sir, I do know what a MoneyGram is. He said, do you know where the MoneyGram store is? And I said, well, a lot of supermarkets and drugstores sell MoneyGrams. And I said, I do know where a MoneyGram store is. He said, we want you to go to the MoneyGram store and wait for our call. Well, now, I was on the landline in my kitchen. Early in the morning, I already told you I was in my nightgown, so I needed to get dressed. And he said, how long will it take you to get there? I said, well, at least 45 minutes or an hour. He said, we want you to go to the MoneyGram store and wait for our call. He evidently thought that I was tethered to a smartphone like the teenagers are. But again, I was on my landline. If I had gone to the MoneyGram store and waited for his call, he would have been calling the landline in my kitchen, and that was the end of that. So end of story that day. But that was one morning. 2 days later, I was sitting drinking my cup of tea, reading my 2 newspapers in the morning. It was just after 9 o'clock. I was in a different nightgown, however, and my telephone rang. And I got up and answered the telephone, and a similar but different man's voice said, is this Mary Bach? And I said, sir, you're correct. Why are you calling me? He said, you have won a federal grant. I said, oh my goodness, send it to me. I'm so excited. How much is it for? He said, it's for $4,300. I said, oh my goodness, the guy the other day promised me $9,700. And he hung up the phone on me. We as consumers have to be aware and informed. We have to be so very careful in all of these circumstances. And of course, you'll hear many people say, just don't answer the phone. If you don't recognize the name and number on caller ID, you just don't pick up. But there are many times when there are some of us who belong to various organizations or church groups or, civic clubs where we might be involved in some type of effort. We don't know the names and numbers necessarily of everybody on every committee that might be calling us. And so as a result, we're tempted to pick up the phone. We're curious as about who or what it is. And I get a lot of cold calls from people that I don't know, people that need to network. They've possibly seen me on television or heard me on the radio, or they know of some of my activities, and they are simply trying to network. So I, for one, always answer the phone, and I am now on every mooch list out there because of it. So be cautious, be careful when you answer. Again, I don't want you to give information you didn't mean to give. And now, not only with our regular landlines or our smartphones, we now have to be so worried not about phone calls or in addition to phone calls, but texts. The scammers are using scam texts more and more and more, and many of you have seen the Easy Pass text where they say that you owe some type of turnpike toll because there was a glitch. And the problem with those is they are usually for a fairly small amount of money. And I'm talking just $8 or $10 or maybe $15. And a lot of people see that text, they know they were on the turnpike, they get scared, and they think, well, that's a nuisance, rather than just fight with the Easy Pass people or fight with, the Department of Motor Vehicles in Pennsylvania, et cetera, the Turnpike Commission. I'm just going to go ahead and pay it and get rid of it. Well, if you use your credit card, now your identity's been compromised. So you have to be so very careful in those kinds of situations as well. And now they have kind of morphed from just plain Easy Pass and the glitches that might be associated with it to actual traffic violations. You get a text saying that there's a traffic violation in your name. Well, I think if you got a ticket, you would know it. But on the other hand, you get this text saying that you owe money because of a particular traffic violation. And again, we just have to be so very careful in all of these situations. Then there are the business imposter scams, and that includes things about our utilities. I bet some of you have gotten a call from what is probably a criminal saying that you are owed a 30% discount or some such percentage on your utility bill. And then they go on to ask you questions about your bill. They want your number. You have no idea where they're going with it. And the utility companies never, but never call anybody cold in those kinds of situations asking for your account information. If it's your utility, they should already have your account information. They shouldn't be asking you for it. There are the scams associated with any of the big box stores or big internet businesses. Again, we're talking Amazon, Target, Walmart, all of those. You know the ones I'm referring to. And they will say, and these come typically with a phishing email, a big ticket item, usually a television or big computer set or something, usually anywhere from $800 to $1,000, has been ordered in your name on your account and sent to this address, and it's someplace far away, California or wherever. And if you did not place the order, and of course you didn't, then you are to contact them by clicking on a link in the email or by calling the toll-free number in the email. Don't ever do either. If you click on the link, it's going to take you right to the criminals. If you call the toll-free telephone number, the criminals are the ones that are going to answer at the other end. So you never want to do that. Delete, trash your best friends. Delete it, get rid of it. It's nothing but a scam. But if it's on Amazon and you happen to have an Amazon account and all of a sudden you get really scared, could this be on my account? I certainly don't want to pay for it because I definitely didn't order it. Then in those circumstances, you need to make sure that you go to your original Amazon paperwork, something that you've got, you've done business with them, you've got it in a file cabinet somewhere or a desk, and you contact Amazon independently of that phishing email. We need to step back do our own homework, pause, as I said, and just be very, very careful in all of these kinds of circumstances. Then there are the friends and family scams. And these are some of actually the worst because they tug at our heartstrings, they mess with our emotions, and romance scams are the top of the list. I don't want anybody in this room to go looking for love in all the wrong places. Romance scams take more money from individuals than any other type of scam. It's a real underreported problem. Scams as a whole are hugely underreported. In fact, the government will say, the agencies that track, say that the reported scams are about 1 out of every 5 actual scams. So only about 20% of victimization is truly reported. And I'm almost embarrassed to say as a woman that 83% of the reported victims of scams are in fact women. I like to think women are smarter than that. But there are more single, older women than men. It's just a fact. And the scammers, the criminals, know that. And there are a lot of women who are looking for companionship, who may be lonely, and they get caught up in romance scam victimization. The bad guys have absolutely no problem whatsoever setting up fake profiles. They co-opt a picture on the internet, put a fake name with it, and they're off to the races. And it's just very interesting that the romance scams follow very specific patterns. The intended gentleman, the romance Lothario, is actually pictured as a doctor in a white coat. He may be part of a UN group stationed abroad. They're always stationed out of the country. Or he's a distinguished-looking military or service personnel in a uniform with lots and lots of all kinds of medals, ribbons on his chest. And women are suckers for a guy in a uniform. And the third category of possible romance hopefuls, it's the young guy in a tight t-shirt with a hard hat, and he's supposed to be out in the middle of the ocean somewhere working on some type of oil rig. All of these men have no access to their money, and so as a result, they lure the victim in. They may gain her trust because of all of the sweet nothings they say to her, and then they come in for the money. Every scam is about money or personal information, and romance scams are all about money. Some of the big match companies, the ones that are on all over the internet trying to let people hook up, the big companies like Match.com, Silver Singles, all of those kinds, they say that approximately 1/3 of the profiles on their legitimate sites are in fact fake. And people go on those sites thinking that they are getting an accurate portrayal of somebody's photograph background, when in fact the companies themselves say that they work as hard as they can to try to keep their sites honest, but it's almost impossible given the technology, and that about 1/3 are in fact fake. The majority of the romance scammers are located in 3 countries: Nigeria, Ghana, and Myanmar. And I think you will be absolutely appalled when I tell you that this for them is a big business. They are usually in the age range of 30 to 50. And for them, it's a job, it's their business. They're after anybody's money. They have no compassion. They'll take your last nickel if they think they can get away with it. Some people lose their entire life savings in these romance scams because the heart simply overrules the head. And the criminal, the scammer, builds trust with the victim and then exploits that person's hope for some type of relationship or ongoing companionship. They're actually referred to as the Yahoo boys, and some of you may have heard that terminology because when they started, they were using the domain yahoo.com. So they were referred to as the Yahoo boys, but they're very good at what they do. And many of these scammers, these criminals, are actually sanctioned by their own government. There is no reciprocal relationship with law enforcement in the United States, so they know they're going to get away with it. And there are actually ministers, pastors, that preach from the pulpit, go out, bring in money any way you can, and they know that they have basically sanctioned carte blanche to do whatever they want to do. Again, romance scams are out there, and they always have a problem accessing their money, so they need their victim to send money because they want to meet you. They want to buy a ticket for a flight to the United States because they're always abroad, and you send the money for the plane ticket, and then something happens on the way to the airport. They're in an accident, they have an emergency, they're arrested, the drug-sniffing dog finds an odor around their luggage, so they're detained and they're not allowed to go through any kind of customs because of possible drug crimes, etc. And so they miss their flight, and then they come back because they're so sorry, and they've got to get all these details worked out, and they need money to pay the fee or the fine or the whatever, and then money for another plane ticket. And it's never ending. It goes on and on and on. Again, we as consumers have to be so very careful. And I know some of you have heard about the grandparent scam. And now, because of artificial intelligence, it's becoming much easier for the criminals to actually take the voices of our grandchildren and use them against our grandchildren and us. Many of the younger people live their lives on social media. They put pictures of every meal they eat. Every time they go out to a restaurant, they put pictures or things about their friends. You know, they tell jokes. It's just their way of life these days. And because of that, because they've got their voice out there or so much information about them and family members, it's very easy for the scammers to take that information and, again, use it against us. The grandparent scam may take anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 from grandparents. Every single family should have a code word or a password, because if you were to get the grandparent or the family member scam and somebody calls and says so-and-so is in trouble, needs money, all you have to say is, what is the family password or the family code word? And I guarantee the criminal is not going to have a clue, because you're going to pick something that is esoteric from the family background, like the vegetable the 2-year-old always spit out every time you tried to feed it to them. And the scammer is not going to know any kind of that detail. So have a code word. And the good neighbor friends and family scam is one that proliferates and you never know when it's going to hit. The scammers, the hackers, go in and they steal somebody's contact list. And then they put an email blast out to everybody in that contact list saying, do you shop on Amazon, for example? Because so many do. And so you get an email then from this person you know, and you may even be really close friends. And they're now saying to you, do you shop on Amazon? And they probably would already know that you probably do if you're really close friends. And so you go back and you say, yeah, what's up? And then they say, I'm traveling. I need you to go and buy some gift cards because it's so-and-so's birthday. And I have only one credit card with me. I'm having a problem. It's maxed out or there's some glitch. And so I need you to go to such and such a store and buy gift cards. And because you're friends, you think, okay, I could do that. And they say, I will pay you back in full as soon as I get back to town. And that seems reasonable to you. Well, this actually happened to a friend of my husband's and mine. This gentleman was an executive with Westinghouse, and he got an email from a very close friend of his. And Marty was our friend, and Dave is the person he got the email from. He and Dave are good friends. And Dave said, Marty, I'm traveling. I need you to buy $400 in gift cards at Target for my niece because it's her birthday and I promised her $400. And so Marty, reading this email and knowing Dave, said, okay, I'll get them for you. He went and he bought $400 in gift cards. And then Marty sent the numbers, pictures of the front and back, to who he thought was his friend Dave. Well, as soon as he sent them, he got an email back. And Dave says, Marty, I've given them to my niece. She's thrilled with the $400 from Target. Thank you so much. I'll pay you back as soon as I get in town. But she just happened to remind me that I had not promised her $400. I had told her I would give her $800 for her birthday. Well, let me tell you, it'd have to be a real special niece of mine to give her $800 for her birthday. So that's when Marty's red flag went off. And Marty and I know each other. He knows of my activities, and he called me on the phone. And he said, Mary, let me tell you what I did. And I happen to know Dave as well. And I said, do you really know if Dave is out of town? Did you even try to call his family? I bet you'd get his wife or one of his children if you just called his house. And Marty said, Mary, I never even thought of it. I said, Marty, don't you dare send any more money. It is a scam, and you have lost $400. He, of course, called Dave's home. Dave answered the phone. Those are the kinds of circumstances that are out there, and that is a very common scam, and it is quite prolific. And I just had a friend that contacted me last week and asked me if, in fact, I used Amazon. I saw it. I immediately knew what it was, and I called her on the phone. And I said, did you know that your contact list has been hacked? She said, Mary, my phone has just been ringing off the hook all day. She said, everybody's spotting it. Everybody's calling me to ask me if I'm all right, if what's going on, etc. So sometimes the word is getting out, and now you know, but I want everybody to be really alert to that particular scam, because many of us have friends that we would be happy to help under certain circumstances. Now I'm really going to change the subject, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about other forms of scams that could touch our lives. And identity theft is something that we're all scared about, and rightfully so these days. The best thing that any of you could do to protect yourself from identity theft is to freeze your credit reports. And in the packets of information that we've given to everybody today, there is actually a card from the FTC that tells you exactly how to freeze your credit report. It's got the names of all 3 credit reporting agencies with their websites and toll-free telephone numbers, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. And you need to freeze your credit reports, because that way nobody, no criminal, can open a credit card in your name at their address. And you certainly don't want that to happen. Freeze all 3 credit reports, and now it is permanent. Once you freeze it, it stays on in perpetuity unless you choose to lift it. You wake up tomorrow morning, you decide you've got to have a new car, and you've frozen your credit reports, and you know the credit reporting agencies, or that the car dealership is going to go to one of the credit reporting agencies to check on your credit, your credit limits and your credit abilities, etc. And so as a result, you then, at the car dealership, will need to contact the credit reporting agency that that dealership uses, whichever one of the 3. When you tell the credit reporting agencies to put a freeze on, they've got 24 hours to do it. But when you decide you want to lift the freeze because you're going to buy the automobile or whatever the big ticket item is, you know they're going to check your report, then you contact the agency that that company or dealership uses. They've got 1 hour to lift the freeze, and it's going to take you longer than that to fill out the paperwork wherever you are about the purchase you're happen to be making. So it's not going to hinder your purchase in those circumstances. And when you have a freeze on, you don't have to worry about using your regular credit cards that you've got in your wallet. You just always use them like you usually do. There's no change in the way you go about doing your personal business. It's just that the bad guys cannot co-opt your personal information. So put a freeze on all 3 of your credit reports. There are lots and lots of signs that might touch your life that your identity has been stolen. You might have an error on your bank account, one of your credit card statements, one of your other statements. You need to routinely scrutinize every single statement that you get from whatever entity it is to make sure that everything on that report is accurate and kosher, as we say. You want to make sure that there are no unfamiliar loans or credit accounts on your credit report. Now, because of the law, and the law has actually morphed over the years, it used to be that each of us was entitled to a free credit report from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies on an annual basis, once every single year. And the website to get your free credit report is annualcreditreport.com, all one word, annualcreditreport.com. But during COVID, they changed the rules, and they allowed you to get free credit reports on a much more frequent basis. And they upped it to once a month. Well, now, and don't ask me why, there's a lot in government that I don't understand. They have now said each and every one of us can have a free credit report from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies once each week. Well, now you talk about overkill. Talk about somebody with too much time on their hands. If you are looking at your free credit reports every single week, you do have too much time on your hands. Come talk to me and I'll put you to work. So again, be really, really cognizant of what the rules are, and do get your credit report from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies. I bet some of you have never even looked at your credit report, but you can certainly get it at a minimum once a year, and probably a couple of times a year might be really wise, but it's something put in your tickle file and make sure that you do. If you ever get some information that a credit application was denied and you didn't apply for that, you know somebody's messing with your identity and you don't want that to happen. If all of a sudden you have a real unexpected drop, and by that I mean a major drop, not just a couple of points, but a whole bunch of points on one of your credit reports, you have to be concerned that maybe somebody is tampering with your identity. If you get a new credit card in the mail that you didn't apply for, you may have a problem. So look into it. Sometimes, all of a sudden, out of the blue, you're unexpectedly denied a loan that you didn't apply for. It means somebody else applied for it. They're using your name and the circumstances. And again, all red flag moments. Be really careful out there because you never know where the criminals are or what they're going to be doing. I have given everybody today a gel pen, a black ink gel pen, because a problem out there that we don't even want to think about is mail theft and check washing. Absolutely. Check washing has become really big business. It is so easy, it's so low tech. The criminals, even though it's a federal offense, don't think they'll get caught, and many of them don't. And so they go about it thinking they're going to get away with it. They steal our mail that we have written a check to our credit card company, our utility bill, whatever it happens to be. It's our good check on our legitimate account. We've got that money in the bank, and we mail it. We mail the check thinking we're paying that bill. And they steal our mail, whether it's out of one of the blue boxes or whether it's out of the mailbox at the end of your driveway when you put the flag up. If you're on a through street, you should really be careful. If you've got outgoing mail and you simply cannot get to the post office to mail it yourself, don't put the red flag up. Every day we all get junk mail. We're going to get the supermarket flyer, or during political season, we're definitely going to get stuff from the politicians. We get mail just every day. And so the mailman's going to come, deliver whatever mail he's delivering, and he'll see your outgoing letter or letters in your box, and he will certainly take them thinking you just forgot to put the red flag up. Don't put the red flag up. That's a symbol to, or a signal to the criminals that there could be something really valuable in that box. And some of you may have heard last summer in Shrewsbury, Pennsylvania, which is in York County, the criminals were so brazen that they actually went to the post office in Shrewsbury. They crowbarred open the blue mailbox in front of the post office on the post office property and stole all of the mail out. I've heard stories from the U.S. Postal Inspection Service about criminals not only wanting the mail, they use some type of saw or device or implement, and they cut the legs off the blue boxes. If they're adhered to some type of big concrete, slab, they cut the legs off. They steal the entire blue box and get out of town, thinking that they've got some valuable mail in it, and they probably do. They're definitely going to have some checks that they can wash. They use common household chemicals. First of all, they've now got your check, and they wash it using items, particularly acetone, which is a nail polish remover, and you can buy it at any supermarket or drugstore. And they wash the payee off the check, put whatever name they want. They've now got your good check on your account with your name signature, and they cash it or they use it for their own purposes. Sometimes they fiddle with the number, but many, many times they just use the check as you've written, except it's a different payee. We have to be, again, so careful. They use fishing line, sticky tape, any kind of glue, and they go down into the blue boxes with that kind of implement and they pull out the checks, you just never again know. Some of these people are just almost ingenious with some of the things they come up with in order to steal our money. So again, you are your own first line of defense in all of these kinds of situations, and you need to protect your mail. Again, always use a gel pen, and that's why I gave you the black gel pen today, because gel ink cannot be washed from the check as easily as ballpoint pen or other types of implements. Black is preferable, but blue is acceptable. Gel ink is the best you want to use because, again, they cannot wash it. It leaves a residue on the check. And so put the gel pen that I gave you or one that you've already got with your checkbook so that any time you write a check, you make sure that you use gel ink. I also want to warn or caution everybody about these. And I know you're seeing these everywhere you go and everything you do these days. QR codes or quick response codes are practically taking over the world. And you cannot look at this and know what it does or what it's going to do for you. It's just a lot of squiggly lines. And I say, you better be careful. Particularly if you're in a public place, you don't know who has access to this QR code and what they might have done to it and what it's going to do to you. My husband and I were in an Applebee's restaurant wanting to have dinner one evening. And on the middle of the table, affixed to the table, was a QR code. And the young man seated us, asked us what we would like as our beverage, and then he went about his business. He came back in a few minutes, brought our iced teas, and said, "Have you decided what you want to eat?" And my husband said, "We haven't even gotten a menu yet." He said, "Just scan the QR code in the middle of the table." Well, I don't think so. You have no idea who might have tampered with that. You have no idea what it's going to give you. Now, granted, it might give you part of the menu, although I'm one that likes to see the prices and the pictures and hold it and decide what I'm going to have. But anyway, somebody could have tampered with it, and it could put any kind of malware or a virus on your smartphone device, whatever you're using to scan the QR code. Be really careful out there because, again, in a public place, you have absolutely no idea who has been sitting there, who has been near it, tampering with it. It's the kind of situation where anything in a public place is subject to criminal tampering. Be careful out there. You never know what they're doing and how it's going to affect your life if you're not being careful. You know, sometimes it pays to complain, and I'm a firm believer in that. And I'll tell you that back in late 2023, during Medicare open enrollment, I was being barraged by telephone calls, and I bet some of you are getting them right now. People saying that you are owed more benefits, whether it's money or groceries or whatever, and that your flex card could have money added to it, depending on what type of plan you've got, on and on and on. All of those are scam calls. By the way, it's against the law for anybody to call you about Medicare or Medicaid on the telephone. That's a federal law. So anybody who's violating that, even a local insurance company that may be selling those policies or trying to help you find the right policy, they're violating the law by calling you. Well, I was getting so many of those calls, 10 or 15 a day. I was furious. And I decided just to appease myself, I was going to report every single call that I got to the Attorney General's office. Let's make these people work for their pay. So I would take as much money out, or as much information out of caller ID, even though it was a scam, even though I knew it was a spoofed number, because you can't believe the names and numbers on caller ID. I would take as much information as I could possibly get, and I would go to attorneygeneral.gov, which is the Attorney General for Pennsylvania's website. All one word, attorneygeneral.gov. And there's a complaint icon. You click on it, and I filled it out so many times I can do it in less than a minute. It's real easy to do. And I would complain about every single one of those calls that I got. And in July of last year, I got a call from an agent at the Attorney General's office with whom I'm acquainted. And she said, "Mary, you have filed so many complaints with the Attorney General's office. We have actually been able to go after one of the companies that you reported. We have elicited a fine, and we are now sharing that fine with everybody who complained." She said, "We are going to be sending you a letter, and in it will be a check. This is not a scam." And sure enough, a few days later, I got a letter from the Attorney General's office, and in it was a check for $100. So I say, it pays to complain. And if more of us would do this, if more of us would take the time to complain about the scams touching our lives, maybe law enforcement would get angry enough, or maybe they would try to go after some of these people, because the scams are not going to go away, and you are vulnerable if you're carrying a credit card in your pocket or your wallet, your purse, and you don't have it protected with an RFID sleeve. Because the scammers out there have got skimmers, and they can walk past you in a room like this, in the supermarket, shopping center, even at church, and they can encapsulate the numbers from your credit card or the information from your debit card if you don't have it protected with one of these RFID sleeves. And so I gave everybody one today. Put the credit card that you use the most in this. When you go to shop, pull it out, use it, put it back in, and put it back in your wallet. There are some manufacturers now that are actually putting RFID protection in wallets and in pocketbooks, so people that have multiple cards don't have to worry about a little sleeve for every one. But you can buy these. There are lots of places on the internet that sell them, and you can get them at the office supply stores. So if you've got a lot of credit cards, you probably need to get yourself some of the RFID sleeves. But here's one today. So really be careful, again, with your credit card, where you're using it, how you're carrying it. And let me say, I don't want any of you to be cheated out of any of your hard-earned money. I want you to be spotting and stopping the scams out there. And whatever you do, don't take the bait. And I thank you all again for coming today.